Welcome back to the revised 30 days challenge, and in today's video we are going to tackle another such problem, and that is I have to think in English before speaking. According to me, this is more like a solution rather than a problem. It's actually a good thing if you are able to think in English before speaking in the initial process of learning. Now, please understand, when you are on this journey of learning a language, you have to start from basic to intermediate to advanced level. I am understanding that some of you are already at intermediate level and they're trying to learn this language in order to reach that advanced level. Now, there are two concepts that you should be very careful about, and I want your attention on this board right now. There is something called as translation and there is something called as thinking in English. Now, when I say translation, I mean translating something from your native language to English. That's definitely a problem. That's a process that I recommend my students not to follow in your life. But on the other hand, there is the second issue, that is thinking in English, which is a definitely correct approach to enhance your language. Now, as I already mentioned, that thinking in English is a process that goes into picture from the very start till the very late point of your learning curve. What I mean by learning curve is that if you're trying to take an approach of learning a language, the learning curve, which we have already discussed in one of our previous videos, goes like this. So from day 1, day 2, day 3, somewhere around day 21 or 22, you actually feel that you are making some changes or you're making some real achievements. But there are lots of failures that are going to be stricken throughout the journey. And in order to take a bump from those failures and reach this point where you feel comfortable, the process of thinking in English takes into consideration from day 1, somewhere around till day 15, you have to do it on a very serious note. Of course, there are ways in which you can think in English. I'm going to discuss such things. There are 4 to 5 points that we're going to cover in today's video, which will help you to make this process of thinking in English a much more easier approach. Okay? So, before we start this solution thing, I want you to understand that it's not a problem. It's a good thing if you are thinking in English rather than translating from a language. Because when you translate from a language, you are giving more attention to that process rather than on the actual conversation. And another difference that you have to understand of translation rather than thinking, translation is actually a very slow process and it happens right at the moment when you are speaking. For example, you are having a conversation with a person. During this conversation, this person says something to you. You try to translate that from your native language and then you give a reply to it. So automatically it becomes a very slow process, and this issue of speaking becomes really slow. On the other hand, when I talk about thinking in English, this is a process that starts from your day 0 till day 15, and this has to be done in a very silent mode. That means the process of thinking in English happens within yourself. You don't need partners for that. You don't need a surrounding for that. You don't need a lot of people around you to help you to think in English. It's a very slow and a very personal process. Only you is required to do this process of thinking in English. Now, I want to talk about the solution. The first solution of thinking in English, or you can say the first way of how you can think in English, is start with thinking in single words. Now, this is an approach which a lot of people at intermediate level as well as at basic level can actually consider. For somebody who is at basic level and they are able to understand other people but they're not able to reply, you can actually start this process right now. If you see something around you, you see a pen, you actually give it a name. It's a pen. If you see a mobile phone, and in your native language you call it a phone, but in English you can actually call it a cell phone or a mobile phone. If you see lights, you can actually call them dorm light or normal lights. If you see a sofa, instead of saying it something in your native language, try to recognize the word of that particular object in English with the correct pronunciation. It's sofa set. Instead of saying I have a sofa there, you can say I have a sofa set in my house. Okay? So the logic here is start with simple single words. If you are somebody who is at intermediate level, you are able to recognize these simpler words, then you try to find a replacement of them. If you see a situation that somebody is happy, you call them happy. Try to find a better word of happy, and that's what you can do at intermediate level. You can call it, this person is in a very jovial mood. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you are at a basic mode, you can actually recognize simple objects and you can give them a name. But if you are at an intermediate level, you can do this process of thinking in English by replacing those simple objects with a good word. If I'm saying happy, I can actually call it jovial. Okay, this is one such example. Don't worry about vocabulary. We have already discussed that there is this new segment of shorts video that's going to come every single day to help you with new set of words and the words that can actually be applied in your real life. So the journey of thinking in English can actually be combined with that shorts journey as well. Okay. Now let's talk about the second method. And the second method is try to create simple sentences. As I already mentioned, this journey of learning a language or thinking in English has to be done at your own level. So what you're going to do now, if you see a situation, you give a sentence to that situation. You see somebody sitting there, you call them, a man is sitting on the sofa set. Or if somebody is lying down, you can call it, a man is lying down on the sofa set. If you are having a cup of tea, you can actually call yourself, I'm having a cup of tea in this moment. So whatever you see, whatever you feel, you do a technique there and you try to create a simple sentence with it. If you are already at intermediate level and you are not wanting to do this process, then you can skip this particular point. You can directly jump to the next method. But before I talk about the next method, I want to take a minute to explain this one. When you are actually creating simple sentences by using this method, you are actually pressurizing your brain to remember these things without even worrying about the pronunciation and the grammar that is being used. So this process of thinking in English is actually a very attractive method and a very useful method because it helps you to internalize the language. What I mean by internalize the English language, it's actually a very simple process. When you internalize something, when you take something inside, you're actually remembering those things by heart. You don't have to worry about next time if this word is called as sofa set or something else because you have actually practiced it so many times that it's a part of your process. Now, if you have to speak in front of somebody, you will actually know the word. Since you have memorized it, you have learned it. You don't have to worry about the pronunciation. You don't have to worry about the sentence there. You don't have to worry about the grammar or the fluency part. And that's how useful this process of thinking in English is. So the first method we talked about was you have to think in simple words. Second method is try to create simple sentences. And that brings me to our third method, and that is create conversations. And it's one of my favorites, honestly. Create conversations. What do I mean by create conversations? Now, since you've already done thinking in simple words, I've already done the speaking sentences part. I cannot actually just keep on speaking sentences with the third party. If I'm going out, I will actually have to do conversations. But before I go out and do this conversation, I have to practice at home. Imagine yourself that in the evening you have to go to a restaurant. Before going to a restaurant at home, you can create a conversation in your head considering you and the waiter as the same person. So what you're going to do is you can start with the dialogue of a waiter. Hello, what would you like to order? You can reply, I'm not sure yet. What will you recommend? The waiter can reply, if you are interested in veg food, I can recommend a mixed veg. You can say, oh, that's wonderful. I'll go with your mixed veg. Thank you. So, before actually being into that situation of actually having this conversation with the waiter, you can have this conversation at home when nobody is watching you, when nobody is trying to tell you what is wrong, what is right, but you have to understand it yourself. And that's why I recommend you to do it with simple sentences. Create conversations about various themes. You want to go to watch a movie? Create a conversation. You want to take a good night's sleep? Create a conversation. You want to have this next big meeting with your manager? Create a conversation at home. You want to have this big business proposal idea and you want to discuss it with somebody? Create a conversation at home before you do it in front of somebody. The more you practice at home, the confidence you will gain with this whole process is very fruitful. And that brings me to our fourth method, and that is create, or you can say narrate your entire day. This one is actually my favorite too. Narrate your entire day. For example, you are alone in your home and you are trying to read a book, but you want to make a cup of tea as well. How will you narrate this whole story? And the narration part has to be done as if you are the third person. For example, I can say, it's evening right now. She is thinking to make a cup of tea and also she's holding a book in her hand. She's wondering what sort of next chapter is going to come with. What kinds of surprises are going to be there in the next chapter. She looks really happy and excited. So what I did, I had an event in my hand of the evening or with a cup of tea, and I narrated that thing in simpler sentences but with continuity. Please understand, if you are at basic level, you can understand me but you're not able to speak in English, start with the first two methods. If you are at intermediate level, start with the third and the fourth method. Alright? Create conversations and create narrations. The more time you can find out to do this whole process, the better results you can find. But please understand, it will take you at least 15 to 20 days to get into the pattern of even finding the results out of it. Okay? And I'm going to give you a bonus method, and that is be creative. Let's say you are trying to find simple words, but you don't find the right word. You can actually be a little creative. For example, you are having a conversation with somebody, but you're not able to find the right word for that particular thing. You can use different lines for that. For example, I wanted to open my door, but I am not able to think of the word key. And it happens in your native language also. Sometimes you forget that word. You're not able to recognize that word. So you can say that, this is a key, but I'm not able to find the word, so I can say that, can you pass me that thing with which you can open the door? Or where can I find that thing which helps us to lock the door? So other person will automatically understand that he or she is talking about key. Another example, garage. I'm not sure what to call this word, so I'm going to say, I will park my car into the place which is next to my house. Or, this is the place where I always park my car. Somebody will help you to find out, it is called as garage. Alright, so that was the bonus tip, be creative. Now, I hope these 5 methods that we have discussed to how to think in English will be really fruitful. And if you have not subscribed to our 30 days challenge, please make sure that you do it, because every alternate day you will be dealing with a new set of problem and you will find the solution in the very same video. We have already discussed day 1. The link is here or maybe here, and this was at day 2. And if you want to understand what this whole 30 days challenge is all about, I'm leaving a link for day 0 as well. Make sure that you like our video and you subscribe to our channel, Learn with Samandash. I'll meet you next time. Thank you.